On September 12, 2025, beneath the blistering desert sun outside El Paso, Texas, U.S. Special Operations Forces launched one of the most complex and high-risk missions ever conducted against the cartel on American soil. This was not a routine interdiction. The target was a heavily armed convoy transporting industrial-scale chemical precursors worth billions of dollars materials, capable of fueling mass narcotics production, or in the wrong hands, being adapted for chemical weapons. Worse still, the convoy was headed toward a fortified compound where more than 180 hostages, women and children, were being held against their will. Failure was not an option. A single mistake would mean an unprecedented flood of synthetic drugs into the United States, and the continued operation of a human trafficking hub located less than 7 miles from a civilian population center. This is the full account of how U.S. Navy SEALs and supporting forces dismantled a cartel fortress, neutralized a private army, and rescued every hostage inside. The operation's warning signs first appeared on September 4, 2025. Just after 7:45 a.m., reconnaissance units monitoring the Texas-Mexico border detected a movement that immediately triggered alarms in Washington. A convoy of 25 armored trucks was advancing north in tight, disciplined formation. Each vehicle had been reinforced for combat and mounted with 6-barrel rotary machine guns, capable of firing up to 3,000 rounds per minute. These were not improvised smuggling vehicles. They were purpose-built war machines, designed to fight through any interception attempt. Inside the convoy were 1,300 barrels of chemical precursors, including more than 363,000 pounds of benzyl alcohol and 334,000 pounds of N-methylformate. On the black market, the shipment was valued in the billions. The convoy was protected by 130 heavily armed mercenaries, many of them veterans of international conflicts. This was no amateur crew. It was a private army, confident that overwhelming firepower made them untouchable. To them, crossing into U.S. territory was simply another step in a well-protected business operation. But they were already being watched. Unmanned reconnaissance drones tracked every mile of the convoy's movement, streaming live feeds back to U.S. command centers. Intelligence agencies had already identified the destination, a heavily fortified base disguised as a cluster of warehouses less than 7 miles from El Paso. In reality, it was a cartel fortress. The compound was encircled by 15-foot steel walls topped with razor wire and protected by 12 rotary cannons capable of saturating the perimeter with thousands of rounds per minute. Inside, more than 200 armed guards patrolled continuously. Most critically, intelligence confirmed that at least 180 abducted civilians, women and children taken from border villages, were being held inside. Some were only days away from being trafficked or sold. The presence of hostages ruled out airstrikes or missile attacks. Any heavy detonation risked mass civilian casualties. That left only one option: a ground assault precise, coordinated, and executed at extreme speed. By 8:20 a.m., the convoy reached the fortress gates and rode inside. With the chemicals, hostages, and mercenary reinforcements consolidated in one location, the stakes escalated dramatically. A failed operation now risked the deaths of hundreds of civilians and the permanent loss of industrial-scale chemical materials to cartel control. The directive from the highest levels was clear. The fortress would be neutralized, the hostages rescued, and the chemicals secured intact. Then, just minutes later, the operation nearly unraveled. At 8:27 a.m., an American reconnaissance drone drifted too close to the fortress's radar envelope. Warning alarms began to sound inside the compound, threatening to expose the entire Strike Force 95 UAVs and more than 350 Navy SEALs already staged in position. Detection at this stage could have been catastrophic. The defenders would have had time to execute hostages or reinforce key defensive POS, ITI, ONSUS electronic warfare teams responded instantly, flooding the cartel's radar systems with false signals and ghost echoes. The drone vanished from enemy screens. The alarm ceased. The operation remained covert by seconds. By 8:45 a.m., all assault elements were in final position. Inside the compound, the cartel's defensive force had swelled to nearly 350 fighters once internal reinforcements were counted. They believed their fortress was impenetrable high walls, heavy weapons, human shields, and superior numbers. They were wrong. The assault force was divided into specialized units, each with a single mission. Around the perimeter, 350 Navy SEALs lay concealed in the desert terrain. 50 operators were assigned to breach the compound and secure the hostage cells. 20 snipers occupied rooftops and ridgelines up to half a mile away, armed with precision rifles effective beyond 1,200 yards. Additional teams prepared to clear hallways and seize weapons caches. Below ground, combat divers had already mapped drainage tunnels to serve as alternate entry routes if surface breaches failed. Above it all, 95 backpack-sized UAVs hovered silently. Each carried a 12-pound precision explosive small enough to limit collateral damage, yet powerful enough to disable heavy weapons and fortified positions. Combined, their distributed firepower was equivalent to nearly half a ton of C4 suspended invisibly over the compound. The timeline was unforgiving. At 9:10 a.m., 15 UAVs would strike the western perimeter, destroying guard towers and heavy guns to draw defenders away. Simultaneously, 50 SEALs would breach the eastern wall and advance toward the hostage cells. Snipers would eliminate exposed gunners within seconds, while additional drones neutralized remaining rotary cannons. Every movement had been rehearsed to the second. At 9:15 a.m., the assault began. From 500 feet above, the first wave of UAVs plunged toward the western defenses. Explosions tore through guard towers, silencing a rotary cannon in a single strike. Another drone slammed into a munition shed, triggering secondary detonations that lit up the desert sky. Mercenary fighters rushed west, firing blindly into smoke and chaos. The diversion worked. More than 80 defenders were pulled away from the true objective. At 9:17 a.m., the eastern breach began. SEAL teams placed thermite charges against the steel wall. In less than 20 seconds, the barrier gave way, and the real fight began. Moving silently with suppressed MP-7 South, SEAL teams flowed through the breach corridors. In the first 2 minutes alone, 11 guards were eliminated without a single alarm being raised. Fire teams advanced in tight formations, clearing hallways with stun grenades and breaching shotguns, leaving no opportunity for organized resistance. Above them, a second wave of 30 unmanned aerial vehicles struck defensive positions across the compound. 9 machine gun nests were destroyed in rapid succession. A fuel cache detonated, sending a column of fire more than 200 feet into the air, its glow visible from El Paso itself. By 9:20 a.m., U.S. snipers opened fire. In less than 5 minutes, 23 mercenaries were eliminated at long range. Each precise shot denied the defenders any chance to regroup, reman heavy weapons, or regain control of the courtyard. Inside the compound, the fighting intensified. In the central barracks, a 12-man SEAL squad collided with nearly 30 defenders in a brutal firefight that saw more than 400 rounds exchanged at close range. 3 American operators sustained non-fatal injuries, yet continued the assault until the area was fully secured. By 9:25 a.m., the fortress was burning on 3 sides. In just 10 minutes, drones had executed 47 precision strikes, crippling enemy communications and destroying the cartel's heaviest weapons. But the most dangerous phase was still ahead. Deep inside the compound, hostages remained chained, and cartel guards began dragging civilians toward firing lines, preparing to use them as human shields. At 9:27 a.m., the final order was given. All teams were directed to push immediately toward the hostage warehouses. Team Bravo led the first breach, cutting into the eastern warehouse using low-yield explosive charges designed to disorient guards without harming civilians. Within 40 seconds, 6 mercenaries were neutralized and 62 hostages were freed. Resistance stiffened near the central warehouse. Nearly 70 entrenched fighters unleashed belt-fed machine guns, firing more than 1,200 rounds in minutes. SEAL teams responded with fragmentation grenades and disciplined suppressive fire. When the smoke cleared, 29 cartel fighters lay dead and 15 more were taken into custody. Overhead, the final wave of 20 UAVs descended on fuel depots and weapons caches. Their strikes destroyed more than 4,000 gallons of diesel and massive stockpiles of rifles, RPGs, and mortar shells. Explosions collapsed guard towers and silenced the last remaining rotary cannons. By 9:40 a.m., the fortress was collapsing under sustained pressure. Mercenaries attempted to flee through breaches in the outer walls, only to be intercepted. 47 were confirmed killed outside the perimeter by sniper fire and SEAL interdiction teams. Inside, room-to-room clearing operations secured all 4 warehouses. At 9:45 a.m., the final count was confirmed. All 182 hostages had been freed, none fatally harmed. The results were decisive. Nearly 320 mercenaries were killed or captured. 95 UAVs conducted more than 60 precision strikes. All 1,300 chemical drums were seized intact, preventing billions of dollars worth of narcotics from reaching American streets. Weapons stockpiles, armored vehicles, and cash reserves were destroyed. For U.S. commanders, the outcome carried a clear message. As the American general overseeing the operation stated, this was never just about chemicals or weapons. It was about lives, about proving that human suffering will not be traded on America's border. Anyone who tries will find only fire and ash. By the time the last fires burned out, what had once been a cartel stronghold was reduced to smoldering ruins. An entire fortress, once a hub of narcotics, weapons, and human trafficking, had been dismantled in less than 30 minutes. The seizure of more than 697,000 pounds of precursor chemicals, along with captured cash and weapons, dealt a devastating financial and logistical blow to cartel networks. But the most significant outcome was human. 182 civilians, many of them women and children, walked free from captivity. In the aftermath, the U.S. government made its position unmistakably clear. This was not simply a raid. It was a warning. Any attempt by cartels, mercenary groups, or trafficking networks to use U.S. territory as a staging ground or safe zone will be met with overwhelming force. The border, officials stated, is not just a line on a map. It is a line of defense, upheld with precision and strength. Still, one question remains. Will this strike deter future operations or provoke cartels and their partners to escalate with even greater violence? That answer is yet to be seen. What is certain is that on September 12, 2025, U.S. Navy SEALs demonstrated the full reach of American Special Operations capability integrating ground assault, electronic warfare, UAV dominance, and flawless coordination into a single decisive strike. The mission did more than dismantle a cartel fortress and save innocent lives. It sent an unmistakable message. America will not allow its border to become a battlefield for traffickers and mercenaries.